Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 523 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, I normally ask to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. I'm continuing my preseason divisional breakdown of the NFL season that is approaching, and we have gotten to the AFC West. And I don't think that there's a better team to start with than the LA Chargers. And more specifically, Justin Herbert. Now, I feel like I've been one of those people that you can say has been harsh on Justin Herbert. Seeing though I am an Oregon fan, I did watch him at Oregon, and everything that he has done up to this point, I have been very vocal on. I'm not going to say critical. I'm going to say vocal. And the reason why I don't want to use the word critical is because I think that I've been honest about what we've seen. I think that I have been honest about the NFL player that Justin Herbert has been. Justin Herbert is the poster child for a lot of things in the NFL. If you want to put the face to a bunch of things, Justin Herbert is the poster child to that. One of them is he's the poster child for reality versus potential. I don't think there's anybody in the history of sports that, let me see something. I don't think there's anybody in the history of sports that we look at in year 6 of their career and still talk about their potential. I don't think there's anybody in sports that can have 6 entire years of their professional career, and instead of looking at the present, we look at, well, that potential, that talent. I don't think, if there's somebody else, please let me know. But again, we're talking about 6 years into their career. Justin Herbert is the face of, oh, but that potential is so high. And I get it. Yes, the stats are there. Justin Herbert has the most passing yards through 5 years in NFL history. I get that. Justin Herbert is one of the best and one of the most pure talents in the league. I got that. But my question is, when we look at the top 4 quarterbacks in the league, right? We look at Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. Why do we not talk about their potential? Why do we not talk about their talent versus what they produce? Why is it that when we talk about Lamar Jackson, we're so critical on the fact of he hasn't made it to the Super Bowl? We're talking about the game of games. He hasn't made it there yet, and people are uber critical on that. Why are people uber critical on the fact of Josh Allen, as talented as he is, can't get over the Patrick Mahomes hump in the playoffs? Why are people so critical on Joe Burrow, didn't even make the playoffs last year, and yet he's been to a Super Bowl? But all we talk about is, and rightfully so, don't get me wrong. I feel like they've played their way. Lamar Jackson has played his way. These are the 4 best quarterbacks we're talking. So, of course, we're going to be uber critical. Of course, we're going to expect more because their talent demands more expectations. But if we're propping up Justin Herbert to be one of those quarterbacks, if people say that his talent warrants being a top 5, top 6, top 10 quarterback. Why are we not as honest about what we're seeing when we talk about Justin Herbert? Again, people is going to say that I'm being overcritical, and I'm not. I'm being honest. At some point, potential got to get thrown. I know what Justin Herbert has done. I respect what Justin Herbert has done. You know what I also respect is the fact of he is 6 years in, touted as one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league, and does not have a playoff win. On top of that, he has been the main reason both times he's had a chance to win a playoff game. He's been the main reason why they have lost those playoff games. If you want to talk about when they played against the Jags a couple years ago, they were up like 28 points at halftime, and he, along with the entire team, crumbled the second half. If you want to talk about last year, he threw as many interceptions in one game than he did the entire season against the Texans. I agree with everyone. And this is why I don't look at it as criticism. I look at it as truth. And this is why, I'm coming off the gate strong. I agree that Justin Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks when we talk about pure talent in the league. I agree that he has traits and he does things in the regular season that other quarterbacks can't do. I agree that if we talk about just pure talent, you can argue that he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. But I'm also honest in the fact that with all that talent that he holds, nothing of merit outside of regular season stats has come about it. Which is interesting because let me advance this conversation. This is probably one of the best teams Justin Herbert has ever been on. When you're talking, you have Joe Alt, who was a great tackle. I know Rashad Slater's out for the season with, I think, a pectoral injury, which is huge. But you have Mekhi Becton, who is a Super Bowl winning guard. You have Keenan Allen. Like, this is Ladd McConkey. He's really good. Will Dissly, he's service. This is one of the best rosters he's been in. Not to mention, Bud Dupree, Derwin James, Khalil Mack. This is it. On top of having Jim Harbaugh as a coach, who's one of the best coaches as we've seen from his track record. He's one of the best coaches everywhere he goes. This is one of the best teams that he's been on, and there's a reason why a lot of people predict that this could be the year that the Chargers overtake the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk about the Chiefs later on in this episode, but I understand why. This is a deep roster. This is a good roster. And my question is, when is Justin Herbert going to show that he belongs in that elite class? Justin Herbert is on that small list of players that it doesn't matter what you do in the regular season. Lamar Jackson's on that list. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. Like, it doesn't matter what you do in the regular season, because we know how talented you are. And in the regular season, your talent is always going to shine. It just matters what you do in the playoffs. And one thing that, one of the reasons why we have to really slow down when we talk about Justin Herbert being one of those top players is because he has something that he doesn't have something that all of them do, and that's at least one playoff win. But I think that this has to be the year. They have one they on paper, and if you look at what this team looked like at the end of last year, they have one of the best defenses in football. I know losing Rashad Slater is huge, but they have one of the best one of the best rosters. This team, and one of the biggest reasons why I started with them is because they have a legitimate shot, in my opinion, to win the AFC West, which there hasn't been another team that could essentially win the AFC West for years now. In fact, if you really look at it outside of one team, which we'll talk about in a second, if you really look at it, the AFC West is one of the toughest divisions in football, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want to start with it. I wanted to get a couple of AFC divisions out the way. The Chargers have one of the best rosters in football, and they have one of the best coaches. But I think, like I say, year after year after year, it don't matter if your quarterback, as talented as he is, again, I don't think that we would have this much energy for Justin Herbert if he didn't show the talent to be a top-tier quarterback. But at some point, when we were talking about the AFC South, I talked about Trevor Lawrence. And I said, at some point with Trevor Lawrence, we have to stop banking on potential. Because you know what that conversation does? You know what that conversation is really admitting? It's admitting that as talented as these quarterbacks are, again, we're talking about Justin Herbert, and right now we're focused on Justin Herbert. As talented as a quarterback he is, as good that he can be, there's still an area of underachievement. That's what that is admitting. That's admitting that even though we believe Justin Herbert is a top-tier quarterback, there has to be a reason why there's a blockage when it comes to the playoffs. Or I'm not going to say a blockage. He hasn't won when it comes to the playoffs. There has to be a reason why he has his absolute worst games in the playoffs. Mind you, it is on him because Ladd McConkey probably had his best game of the season in the playoffs last year against the Texans. It was also followed by Justin Herbert throwing, 4 interceptions? And I'm saying that this year's team is better, but you can argue that last year's team was just as good, if not better, than this year's. I feel like I say this yearly, and I feel like I have to continue to say this because the conversation continues to roar on. At some point, again, this is year 6. They have one of the best rosters in football, and you can argue the best roster in the AFC West. But at some point, that potential and success have to meet. Because I'm looking outside of, again, Rashad Slater not being there, which is huge. There's not too many holes in this team. Right now, the biggest hole that I see is the lack of success at the quarterback position. And that's the most frustrating thing. It's not because he's not talented. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. It's just We're still waiting as fans. We're still waiting. And again, I'm an Oregon fan, so this isn't me going like I'm not trying to crap on them. This is essentially me saying, you know, when is that? But when can we stop talking about? And I'm not even saying that Justin Herbert has to win a Super Bowl. But what I'm saying is a quarterback as talented as him is good enough to at least make it to a Super Bowl. That same type of quarterback we're talking hasn't won a playoff game. I think that this is the year that it has to happen. And when I think the worst, as much as I'm saying that, I still think even if it doesn't, there's still going to be media pundits. There's still going to be fans. There's still going to be people that talk sports that's going to talk about Justin Herbert's potential. And my retort to that is, when is potential going to meet success? Because it has met an abundance of success in the regular season. But just like we talk about James Harden, does it really matter? As great as you are, why is it that the only thing that we talk about is regular season success? Again, if you want to put him in that same class, the top 4, top 5 class, accolades have to matter somewhere. And he has a bunch of historical regular season accolades. But that's it. And last thing I'm going to say before I move on is, again, this Chargers team has the potential to be the best team in the AFC West. So this is the year. This has to be the year that something has to give. Speaking of this has to be the year, there's a group of teams that you just know almost every year that they are just a step behind. One of those teams is the Las Vegas Raiders. Just as much as we talk about Justin Herbert and how we always talk about potential, the flip side to that is when we continue to just bank on the past, when we don't accept what is, when we don't see clear-cut evidence, years worth of evidence of what we're looking at, but we want to bank on the past. I feel that that is what we talk about. When we talk about the heydays of the Raiders, when they were in Oakland, might I add, I feel it's difficult for people to accept that this is not a good team. And it hasn't been a good team for a while. Yes, they have one of the best young tight ends in football in Brock Bowers. Yes, they have one of the best defensive players in Max Crosby. Yes, I think that it's going to be very exciting watching someone like Ashton Genty, and he has a really good shot of winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. All this is true. Yes, I'm not as high on Geno Smith, even though he had an incredible year last year. I'm not as high on Geno Smith as a lot of people are, but I'm also not as low on Geno Smith as a lot of people are. I think that he is a serviceable quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. But the issue with that is there's no more winning if you're a good quarterback. You have to be a great quarterback. When we get to the NFC East and we talk about I don't think Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is probably the only exception. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think he's really good. But when you have arguably the best running back in the league, when you have arguably the best receiver room in the league, when you have undoubtedly the best offensive line in the league, when you have undoubtedly the best, or at least one of the best defensive lines in the league, when you have one of the best, like when you have best or arguably the best units around you, you can be a really good quarterback, not a great one. We'll save that for the NFC East. Geno Smith doesn't have that. And I will say that, and this is no disrespect to Jalen Hurts, but I think that Geno Smith is closer to Jalen Hurts than he is to someone like Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes. And I know that the Raiders obviously have a new coach in Pete Carroll. But let's be honest, man. This isn't a good roster. The pieces that they just brought Jamal Adams in, but this isn't a good roster. You have good singular pieces. Again, Brock Bowers is a great tight end. Ashton Genty, we're still waiting to see, but he looks like he can be good. Max Crosby's one of the best defensive ends in football, but like, I'm looking at this roster right now, right? And I'm trying to, Terrell Edmonds is okay. He's good. I'm trying to look at, outside of the people that I named, who is the name, the person that you can really put your faith in and say, oh yeah, this is going to take us over. Lonnie Johnson, he's cool. They don't have, outside of the people I named, this is not Jacoby Myers. Okay, that's cool. Raheem Mostert, okay, that's cool, but he had a pretty down year last year in Miami. Ooh, like when I was doing the researches, I didn't really look hard at this roster as much as I'm doing now, and boy, Eric Stokes, cool. This is not a good roster, bro. And one they got Devin White, but Zaire White, he's a pretty good running back. Okay, I don't fully take back my statement, but they have some pieces. But having some pieces and being a good team is night and day different. I don't think there should be anybody that think. In fact, I think I'd be more shocked. Spoiler alert. I know we haven't talked about the Broncos, and I know we haven't talked about the Chiefs yet. But I'd be more shocked if the Raiders don't finish last in their division. Because while they have pieces, those pieces aren't amounting. I don't think those pieces can join together and be better rosters than the rest of the West. I'm just being honest, bro. Oh, I want to address what happened with Geno Smith. I believe it was the first preseason game where I think they were playing the Seahawks, and he alongside, well, I'm just going to focus on him. He flipped off a fan for having a sign essentially saying that, or was questioning who was a bigger bust in NFL history. Was it Geno Smith or Jamarcus Russell? While, yes, you would love a professional athlete to react differently to something like that. And while, yes, I do think that Geno Smith could have reacted differently, I also want to remind people that these are people we're talking about. I know the team, the money, the fandom, the fact that you paid your money to see these players. I know the contract. I know that usually clouds people's vision of people. But let's not forget that these are human beings, and every human being has feelings. Every human being has emotions, and they're going to react differently. You know, one of the biggest stories this week, and actually the last probably 2-3 weeks, has been the WNBA and fans throwing sex toys on or dildos onto the courts. This happened about 5 or 6 times. And one thing that isn't really getting talked about is the fact of not only is it disrespectful to the game of basketball, but how are you supposed to feel these players understanding that there are a select number of people that don't give two craps about them enough to throw which is also, actually, I don't know how it is in the WNBA, but usually when you're at a home game or whoever, if there's something that gets thrown on the court, the home team usually gets a tech. So not only are you disrupting the game, you're harming your own team. And how do you think that those women feel knowing that you don't care about them at all? You just want to make a statement on the backs of their game. Geno Smith, I know he doesn't know these fans from a can of paint, but you also have to realize the road that it took to get there. Again, I would hope that he'd react differently, yeah, but he didn't. And okay. What I'm saying, these people are gonna have emotions. People are gonna react differently to things. There's a lot of fans that have forgotten that they're fans, that you're paying your hard-earned money to see these people. And just because you're paying your hard-earned money doesn't give you the right. Now, I'm not saying that fan did anything wrong. Let me also say that. I don't know what he said. He could have said something crazy. I don't know. But what I do believe that there's a lot of fans that think just because you pay your money for something, you can just act any type of way to somebody else just because you can't have legit access to them. Because my question is always, what happens if? Would you say that to Geno Smith if you could physically touch him? He could physically touch you? Would you have made that sign? All those people that's throwing dildos at the WNBA. If the WNBA players can touch you, or anybody can would you have done that? That's what people have to remember. Come on now. But, again, back to the original point. I would be, and I think, before I say, I think Brock Bowers is a phenomenal tight end. Pause. I think that by the end of this year, if we get the same Travis Kelce that we got last year, which we'll talk about shortly, if we get the same Brock Bowers that we got last year, we get the same George Kittle, I would not be shocked if you look seasons in and Brock Bowers is considered the best tight end in football. That's how good he is. When we were talking about college football and when he was, doing his thing at Georgia, I said I think he is arguably the greatest collegiate tight end we've ever seen. And he's just carrying that to the NFL. I think he had the most receptions from a tight end and rookie in his rookie year in NFL history. But with all that, Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, Geno Smith, Devin White, Jacoby Myers, Max Crosby, Zaire White, I would be shocked if this team finishes closer to the bottom of the division than the top. Because I don't see this team anywhere close to the Chargers. I don't see this team anywhere close to the Chiefs. And I don't see this team anywhere close to the next team that we're going to discuss, and that is the Denver Broncos. Now, from one Oregon alum to the next, I think this is a huge season for Bo Nix. I'm not going to say make or break season because it's only year 2. But I think that this is a huge season for Bo Nix. Expectations not only change, because they should change over time, but they also change by what you do the year before. For instance, I think expectations have and should change for this Denver Broncos team because of the success that a lot of people, including myself, did not foresee last year. Making it to the playoffs. Yes, they ultimately did get boat raced by the Bills, but we're talking about a team that a lot of people didn't even think was going to the playoffs. It kind of sped up how we felt about this Denver Broncos team, and it kind of sped up the expectations. Well, as we sit here today, there's not many teams in the NFL better than the roster that is the Denver Broncos. This team is just overflowing with talent, whether you talk about Jonathan Cooper, whether you talk about J.K. Dobbins, Evan Ingram. Obviously, you have Bo Nix, you have Troy Franklin. You have the reigning defensive player of the year in Patrick Surtain. This team is loaded. And I'm just marveling at this. This is a roster, bro. And just like I talked about with Justin Herbert, Cortland Sutton, Jesus loves you. Just as I talked about with Justin Herbert, a little bit less with Bo Nix because, he's only in year 2, but the success, and this is honestly with every team, but I'm focusing on those two because they have quarterbacks that either A, has proven to be extremely good for multiple years, or B, which we're talking about Bo Nix, was incredible his rookie year. The success of this team is going to be on the shoulders of how and if Bo Nix is able to progress. If the Bo Nix that we saw last year can improve. Because I didn't realize it. And shout out to Nick Wright, shout out to the First Things First episode or the show on FS1, but when he put the numbers, honestly, he put the numbers from college and year one next to each other. And as much as it didn't feel like it, Bo Nix essentially had the same season his rookie year as Mac Jones. Jesus loves you. And I'm like, ugh. I'm not saying that that's automatically going to be the ceiling, but if that's the ceiling, ugh. I think a lot of expectations are put on this team, not just because of last year, but because this is one of the best teams in football. You can argue that this is a top 10 roster in football. Now, I know that it took some help, and it took a team like the Bengals to start off incredibly slow, but however it happened, this Broncos team made it to the playoffs. And when you have someone like Marvin Mims, when you have the connection with, again, Troy Franklin, the Oregon connect with him and Bo Nix, the sky is the limit, bro. But you know what? I think one thing that I did think, whoa, words, Jalen. One thing that I believe, I forgot they have Dre Greenlaw. I'm hoping he can stay healthy, but and they have John Franklin Myers. Yeah, they got a squad, but they also have Hufunga. Yeah, this boy, this roster is crazy. But what I was saying was, one thing that I believe helped Bo Nix last year is the fact that he had so much college experience. I think he played the most college games in like NCAA history, or I think that record was broken by like Dylan Gabriel or something, which is also ironic because both of them played for Oregon. Because he had so much experience, and I know that there's a difference between NCAA and the NFL, but he had so much college experience that it was hard to throw anything he hasn't seen. I'm interested to see, okay, well, now teams kind of know what your tendencies are. Teams have tape on you. Teams know what you like, what you don't like. Teams know what your weaknesses are. I'm very interested to see what it looks like next year or this year. Because one or two things can happen. Either this team lives up to the potential. I don't think it's a Super Bowl caliber team, but I think that it is a good team and should at least have some type of playoff success. Or they're going to underachieve. That's it. And I don't think it's crazy to say that there is a lot of pressure on Bo Nix. And rightfully so. He played himself to that position. He played himself to a point where now we should expect, I'm not going to say greatness, but we should expect a jump, a leap. And then it gets me to Sean Payton. And I do think it's telling. Well, you know what? Let me not go down that road. Sean Payton is one of the best coaches in football. I do think that when you win a Super Bowl, that puts you in a different stratosphere. There's not too many NFL coaches that's walking around right now that has won a Super Bowl as a head coach. So for that, you got to tip your hat to Sean Payton. And I will say that as much grief as I give Sean Payton, as much grief as I give that whole mindset of I have to win it my way, they were good last year. My question is, can they sustain it? Because I look back on those Sean Payton Saints years, and as great as a coach you can say he was and is, as much success that came his way, most of it was not just off the backs of Drew Brees, who is undoubtedly one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen and will be a first ballot Hall of Fame next year. But a lot of that success stopped once they got to the playoffs. Mind you, as great as Drew Brees was, as great as teams that he had, some incredible defenses that the Saints had, Drew Brees and that team only went to one Super Bowl. Now, yes, they're 1-1, but still. On top of that, and you can say it's bad luck. I mean, it's cool, but the Saints would lose in some spectacular ways. Like some of the ways that they lost, you couldn't even fathom. My thing is, we know Sean Payton should be comfortable in a sense of he wasn't comfortable when he had Russell Wilson because that wasn't his guy. Bo Nix is clearly his guy, and he, in a sense of Sean Payton, had an incredible coaching year last year. So you got your guy. You should be comfortable. This is yet another year where Bo Nix should know the offense, and it should be running smooth. How good can this team be? One, seeing as though it is one, especially defensively. In fact, now that I'm sitting here talking it through, I'm not disrespecting Drew Brees. Please don't hear me say that. But Sean Payton is building this team just like he built the old Saints teams. You know, he had Jonathan Vilma. Like they had incredible defenses. And they had good offenses. Again, you have Cortland Sutton. You have Mims, Franklin, J.K. Dobbins. My hesitation is how, outside of 1 year, how far did those Saints teams really get? But I root for. I do want to see what happens. This is a tougher schedule too. Now I'm thinking about it. Let me go to their schedule. Because their schedule ain't nothing. You got to go up against the Chargers. Well, obviously, you got to go up against the Bengals, the Eagles, Texans, Commanders, Green Bay. Tough. And I see what the league is doing. They did it to the extreme with the NFC East, and we'll talk about it more there. But I see what the league is doing. They don't want a lot of. One of the biggest cries last year was with the Cincinnati Bengals and the fact of because the Chiefs had the season essentially wrapped up, they know that they were going to the playoffs. They were able to rest all of their starters the last game of the season, and that is actually why the the Broncos was able to make the playoffs because the Broncos beat the Chiefs, and the Cincinnati Bengals wasn't able to make it. Well, what they're doing, and they did this to the extreme again with the NFC East, but what they're doing is they're putting damn near they're backloading the season with all the divisional games. Not all, but if you look from week 11 to week 11 to from week 10 to week 17, you have all of your divisional games. You got you're going against the Chiefs, going against the Raiders. You have the bye week in week 12. Then you go against the Raiders again in week 14. You go against the Chiefs in week 17. And week 18, you have the Chargers. So what they're essentially trying to do is they're trying to make these last games important so you don't have teams sitting out. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but we'll see. And again, we'll see what happens with this Chargers team. I mean, not Chargers, with this Broncos team. But they do have one of the best, I'll say. They do have one of the best rosters in football. That is true. So, then last but oh so certainly not least, you have Red Kingdom. You have Chiefs Kingdom. You have Arrowhead. You have the Kansas City Chiefs. You know what's hilarious about this Chiefs team? Or let alone what's hilarious about how we speak on this Chiefs team? We talk about this Chiefs team like last year they didn't go 17-2 or no 15-2 last year. We talk about this team like they were just god awful last year. We talk about this team like they weren't just in the Super Bowl last year. We talk about this team like they don't have arguably the best quarterback in the league. We talk about this team like they fell off a cliff. Because when I hear a lot of these divisional breakdowns, when I hear a lot of these predictions, there's people that don't even have the Chiefs making the playoffs. Now, I think those people, it might be clickbait. I don't know. That's insanity. But if we talk about this Chiefs team, like, while I do believe last year was a down year in a sense of, and you know what? Let me walk you. Hold on. Last year might have been the scariest year ever from a team. Now, I know ultimately they didn't win it all. But I do agree with a lot of people in saying that last year was a down year for the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year, offensively, they just couldn't get it right, man. They dealt with injuries with Rashid Rice, and I know he's going to be suspended sometime. I don't know if it's been confirmed as far as how many games, but I think they're saying he's going to be suspended between the 4 to 6 games range. Okay. But think about this, man. What's cuz name? I definitely slipped my mind. Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco missed a lot of the season. Rasheed Rice missed most of the season. You had a rookie in Xavier Worthy. I think that was the worst season that we have seen in a long time by Travis Kelce. Again, the offense just wasn't. The offensive line was god awful. God awful. Especially when we talk about Jawan Taylor. I think Jawan Taylor, and no offense to him, but I'm just be honest with you. I think Jawan Taylor is the worst tackle in football. And he was getting important reps. But as much of a down year as it was, I think that's why it was scary to think about. That was probably one of the worst the Chiefs have looked offensively under Patrick Mahomes for a season. And they still finished 15-2 and made it to the Super Bowl. Now, they didn't win it, but they made it to the Super Bowl. They still had and still have one of the best defenses in football. Like there's not too many defenses that can go up against this squad, man. Hollywood Brown's supposed to be coming back. He missed most of the season. You still have Nick Bolton. Like, boy, you still have what's his name, bro? It's on the tip of my tongue, bro. What is his name? Why am I slipping on his name? Chris Jones. Why did I forget that? George Kavictus, this team is gonna be serious. And on top of that, Creed Humphreys is coming back at center. It looks like they did get a deal done with Trey Jones. Yeah, man. I'm just looking at this. Yeah. This is going to be a squad, man. Trey Smith, I think it is. Yep, Trey Smith. And it looks like Josh Simmons, I know the rookie at Ohio State, he looked like he can be a dog. The fact that a team that is led by Patrick Mahomes, that has Travis Kelce, that has, Hollywood Brown and Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt and Rasheed Rice when he comes back and Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster's back. A team that had all that. I know Robert Tonyan, he's there. With all the struggles that they had last year, this team still finished 15-2. And honestly, the last game didn't really count because again they benched their starters because it was wrapped up. I hear a lot of people saying that this is going to be the year. I know Colin Cowherd said the dynasty is over. I know there's a lot of people saying that this is going to be a down year for the Chiefs, and I get it. Last year they didn't look the greatest, and they have a schedule. When you start out with the Chargers, then you go to the Eagles, then week 4 you have the Baltimore Ravens, then week 6 you have the Detroit Lions, then week 8 you have the Washington Commanders, then week 9 you have the Buffalo Bills, then you have the Broncos week 11, then you have the Cowboys week 13, you have the Texans week 14. It is going to be a schedule. They have one of the toughest schedules in football. On top of that, the thing that is helping them is a lot of their, like the Eagles, they're playing at Arrowhead. Baltimore, they're playing at Arrowhead. Detroit, they're playing at Arrowhead. Washington, they're playing at Arrowhead. Now, week 9, they're at Buffalo in November. But I think what's also scary is that I don't think we've ever. Last time we saw Patrick Mahomes and this team with their backs against the wall, feeling like they have something to prove going into the season was when they lost the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady and that vaunted defense. Well, how did that season go? How do you think that season went? As much as we praise, the top 4 quarterbacks, as much as we praise the AFC and stuff like that, there's still one Patrick Mahomes. There's still one Kansas City Chiefs. And until I see, now I'm not going to say, because my statement was until I see somebody knock off the Chiefs, and I'm going to believe that they're still the Chiefs. You can say, what about the Super Bowl? Yes. I think that last year they went up against a far superior team in the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Eagles were clearly the better team going into the Super Bowl. We talked about they had one of the best overall rosters in NFL history. But we're still talking about a team and the Chiefs that feasted on the AFC. A team that 2 losses. One came on the road. The other one came on the road and against Buffalo. The other one came when your entire team sat. And I still think that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in all of football. I know he had a down year, and I think we could possibly see a bounce back year for Travis Kelce. This is a tough schedule, though. Oof, boy. I think you still have Andy Reid, who is one of the greatest coaches ever. You have Spags, who's one of the best defensive coordinators ever. I think that in their mind, they're going to go on a revenge tour. They're going on a quote-unquote vengeance tour, the Chiefs. And that, in my opinion, should put fear in everyone because, again, we're talking about a team. Now, I understand that they lost a couple of crazy, or they won a couple of crazy games last year, and they had one of the closest points differentials in football. But, yeah, we're talking about a team that still has Patrick Mahomes. So, if we talk about the entire AFC West, I think that you have the Chiefs, and one of the only reasons why I'm picking the Chiefs to win the division is because they have the best quarterback in all of football, in Patrick Mahomes. and I talked about it when I talked about the Chargers. There has to be a season where potential meets opportunity, like potential meets success. I think that the second best team is going to be the Chargers. I think the third best team is going to be the Broncos. I don't know if Bo Nix is going to have the same type of success that he had last year, even though the team is incredible. And then you have the Raiders that I don't expect nothing from the Raiders. The Raiders ain't good, in my opinion. No offense, it's just the God honest truth. So I have Kansas City Chiefs. And I will say that the Chargers and Chiefs are a lot closer than I guess I'm giving them credit for. You have the Kansas City Chiefs, you have the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders. Outside of the Raiders, we're talking about three teams, the Chiefs, Chargers, and Broncos, that have some of the best rosters in football. I think the Chiefs last year had one of the best defenses in football, and I think that they can also, yet again this year, have one of the best defenses in football. The issue with the Chiefs is their offense just couldn't get it together from injuries, from inconsistency, drops. It just wasn't good. I think that they're going to most of this roster was here last year. I think that they're going to clean it up. And then the Chargers dealt with a lot of injuries last year, but they also dealt with just being okay. I am interested to see how they're going to bounce back from Rashad Slater not being there for the season. But, yeah, I think it's not as much of a gaping hole as the AFC East is, because it's the Bills and then there's like a crater. I think what it is the Chiefs, very close, the Chargers, very close, the Broncos, and then just a wide gap from the Raiders. So, we'll see. There you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link's in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. I appreciate all of you guys. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe. I am trying to grow the podcast. So I thank you all. If you are subscribed, please like, share, comment, all that stuff. Again, that is the YouTube. For my DSPs, that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. I'm trying to grow, again, the podcast, and I need you guys' help. I need you guys to share it. I need you guys to comment and rate. If it definitely mean a lot to me. If you are subscribed and you know someone that would like the content, send it to them. I appreciate it. My socials: TikTok, Instagram, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Please follow. I post pretty much daily there. I post reels. I post stories. That's probably the quickest way to get to me. If you keep it respectful, I don't mind going back and forth. It just means not only that you're listening to me and that you have an opinion, but you're watching my video content, and I appreciate all of it. Again, keep it respectful, and I do not mind going back and forth, just leaving the comments, and we'll see what it is. Until next time, much love.